Hiya, and welcome to part two of the Fight Club podcast. So I said I was going to continue on from books and pieces, the books and the pieces of Jack, like I am Jack's, whatever the body part was, and there was in this house there was like piles of these insights around parts of his body, and I feel like this is where when you ignore the body and the body is trying to tell you something. It's um, like in metaphysical realms, you'd say like the liver. If you have liver issues, there's some kind of anger. And in our work, it's like the musculature, like wherever you have certain pains, like the jaw or the neck or wherever it is, there's some part of you that you've ignored and suppressed in childhood, and it's become part of your musculature. It also reminded me of like one of the techniques that we use called voice dialogue, where like you have an issue around something and then you externalize it by putting it in like an opposite chair or some other part of the room, and you talk to it. So for example, let's do like the part of you that always chooses the wrong partner. So you might like embody that and go sit or stand in the room where that part of you exists, and then you talk from it. So the part of you that I just drop into, I'm going to drop into someone that I know, and I'll go, okay, so I feel annoyed. Like I feel like I'm always looking for someone to fill me up. I'm always looking for like a reason to feel worthy, and in doing that, I seek out people that kind of put me on a pedestal, and then after a while, like when I don't make it to their whatever their mythical pedestal standards are, then like I fall, and then I end up like feeling shit about myself again. So um, yeah, so that's a part of someone that I know. That's a part of them that struggles finding the right partner. And then what you do is you jump into the part of you that is compassionate towards that, the part of you that, or the part of you that does find the right partner. So the part of you that does find the right partner, I'm going to drop into that of that person. Yeah, like I struggle. Like there's always that part over there that ignores the red flags, ignores all the warnings that I give, so that they just haven't learned the lesson yet. Like I feel like I'm more than capable of being able to find like this right partner, this person that suits me where I'm at right now, and I feel like just being okay in like if I'm not what they see me to be, just being okay that I am at where I am at, and from that space I'll be able to find the right person for me in that space. So that's that component of the person, and then to spice it up a bit, you might throw in like a third party, like a higher self, and you go, well, what's the lesson that you learn here? Well, the lesson is, that there's the part of you that you're ignoring, there's a part of you that knows the way, and it's built into you. So it's not like you're incompetent. It just means that you're giving more weight to one part of you, and there might be multiple layers to that. So as far as the movie goes, the books that have those parts of Jack in him, I feel are the parts that he wants to like, the parts that are written and put away. So whatever this person is that wrote those, and there's multiple analyses on that. So anyway, in that house when Marla comes around, it's really triggering for the narrator, and like you see him like neurotically brushing his teeth, and it takes him back to childhood, like I mentioned in the last podcast. Like it takes him back to this childhood place where, um, like what's important is kind of it gets reprioritized, and like after like all these fights that happen, it starts to, after all like, the various fight clubs that happen, the various sessions that happen, he starts to build up like this remapping of reality, like what's really important. So like the quote is like the volume gets turned down on the shit that's not important, and I feel like that's where we're at right now. Is like in quarantine, there's a lot of stuff that's not important that we've spent like decades, like whole lifetimes doing, So it's like they're like in this crisis of nothingness. It's like, well, what's important? Like what's really important? So that feels like a very pertinent metaphor. And there's a scene in there where the narrator's talking to Tyler. Tyler's in the bath, and the narrator's, I can't remember, he's shaving or something. And they're talking about like their fathers and like how their fathers left them or convinced them to go to college and get a job. And there's a really important moment where Tyler's reminiscing about talking to his dad and like, oh, I've been to university now, Dad. Like, what do I do next? It's like, well, you do this. Oh, okay, I've done this now. Okay, now do this. So over this whole like this conditioning process, you're trying to please your father, and your father's not really there. Like your father's part of the waking dead, the sleeping awake. So it's like, why trust a being if they don't know the way? And it's it's a sure sign of those. If your father isn't doing what he loves, or he complains about, oh, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that, then he's not living his life. And taking advice from him, it needs a lot of compassion for him and wisdom for yourself. He also talks about being raised by women. So statistically, single parent families and families where there is no father, much higher statistics of drug abuse, rape, falling out of school, all kinds of crime, pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, um, women struggling with doing more masculine orientated skills like mathematics and certain sciences. So there's an element of how a father is an important component and has been an important component in our evolution as society. And I feel like during war, we've lost a lot of our good men, or men that could lead. And that said, I feel like it's given a way for more of the matriarchy to come through, and I do feel like we're seeing much more of a matriarchal age right now, where there's a crushing of boundaries. There's much more. I feel there's much more chaos. There's less control in the developed world. Like we're seeing mishmash of rules, like rules that don't make any sense historically, and where the pace of change is accelerated. So I feel like we're actually more in a matriarchy right now. That's where we're going. The authenticity is triggering and confronting for others. So when you confront someone and authentically, it can bring up all kinds of insecurities in them. And that's what plays out in like the office, the workplace. That's what plays out in the movie, when they try and pick fights. Is one of the assignments that they get later in the movie. Like being authentic and doing something is really triggering for someone. And that's why I like Marla. Marla is so authentic, and she like triggers the fuck out of the narrator. One of the important aspects of this is the pub. So the first Fight Club starts in a pub, and the pub is like, it's like the personification or anthropomorphization of like escapism. So men go to the pub, talk about your problems, and not really go anywhere. Like get drunk, avoid the problems. And same thing with women. Women do it too. And having the first Fight Club underneath the pub feels like it's like a journey into the underworld. Like this is what men are really feeling. This is what's going on. Like the unfelt rage of men. The men feeling lost. Men feeling outside of their bodies because the pub pulls them out of their bodies. The pub gives them an excuse to stay as part of the sleeping awake. So I feel like under the pub is a dive into the inner world and inner ownership of our divinity and authority. The rules of Fight Club, we don't talk about Fight Club. Rules are sacred. Yeah, there's a sacredness that you can create when you have certain rules like that. Like in sharing circles, you don't share what happens in that sharing circle. Like you don't associate a story or a narrative with a person because that space is sacred. Same thing in the Tantra community. When a man fights, he's no longer the same man again. And we see this in men and women in our work where, and any women that do this kind of like cathartic release work, there's some amazing coaches that I know, Monica Yates, she's one, and she does cathartic release as well. And the women change. Like, it's completely different. Their energy is different. They're much more able to manifest and create things and express their emotions much more authentically. Like they can communicate more lovingly with their partners. They can sink into their feminine much more. So I feel like anyone that does like the kind of cathartic release, like you're never the same person again. Like you can't stay in your head. Like it's not a mental thing to feel awake. It's a physical thing. You need to be in your body. Otherwise, you're kind of like off in the clouds meditating, and it's you need to feel it. It's a bodily, visceral feeling to be awake. Tyler also talks about self-improvement, and I love this because I've been guilty of this. Like we kind of glorify self-improvement, like it's like this double speak around like you're doing something that's creative. And I think it's definitely a misnomer because it's actually like self-destruction. And Tyler says it's self-destruction versus like self-improvement. So in order to grow, you really need to effectively die to who you were before. And it's a destructive process. And I feel like that's where the deepest inner work is when you're able to accept that life, death, life, that in order for a new life to grow, that you need to let another part of your life end. The reason for living. So, like for the men, when Fight Club becomes the reason for living, like coming into your body, like when you feel how good it is, you don't want to stop. Like the parallels are like when you start doing inner work, it's like you look at your shadow, you don't want to stop. Like for me personally, this has been a 3-year journey, and like I'm not going to stop. Like I keep uncovering layer upon layer of shit that I thought that I had a good wrap around, and I have no idea. And a lot of this is esoteric stuff. A lot of this is spiritual stuff that completely defies any kind of laws of or notion of science or scientific journals. So to try and make any kind of correlation even to it is be thrown in the fucking loony bin. So let's go into sex and the split in sexuality. So Marla, I love Marla. I'm going to keep saying that. Marla is like this chaotic energy, and so after sex with Tyler, sometimes there's like this schizoid, like a schism reset, and he becomes the narrator again. And I see Tyler as like a very phallic, narcissistic man in Reich's term. Like he's a very manly man, not really connected to his heart. And then the narrator, Ed Norton, is quite connected to his heart. Like he can voice his displeasure and distaste and discomfort and care even. However, Tyler kind of communicates in grunts with Marla, and it doesn't really communicate at all with Marla. And we don't see him communicate other than like shut up and like when he's fucking her. So it's kind of like this duality in sexuality where in a lot of men there's a split between like your primal self and your non-primal self, like your developed self, let's call it, for the lack of a better phrase, where like there's a part in a man that wants to fuck primally, and in order to do that, right now the woman needs to be receptive in order to receive that. And I feel like with a lot of like Me Too stuff and the way we're feminizing men, we've kind of lost that spark, like lost that want to like fuck primally, And I feel like now it's about being able to join the two. So being able to fuck primally and do it from a heart space. So like being consciously aware of what's going on with your partner and allowing yourself to lose control in that space while remaining connected to your heart. And so that's something that I've been working on very heavily. And I feel like it's possible. And it unlocks some pretty awesome sex magic. So that's what I see in the movies. It's like this metaphor of like a split in sex. And then like there's a scene where Marla comes downstairs and Ed Norton goes like the narrator goes, "What are you doing in my house?" And it's like this triggers around like the discomfort around some like an energy in your space. Like there wasn't like a tenderness around what's going on. There was more like this split of like this is something that women see a lot, where 1 minute the guy's really nice, the next minute he's a fucking asshole. So there's like, which can happen after sex. Like oxytocin works differently in men and women, and when there's a sexual split, which can be at the pelvic, it can be in the belly. Like after sex, the energy bypasses the heart and goes straight to the head. So you're trying to make sense of everything, and in that sense place, you get disconnected from your heart. And I see that as like there's a in the narrator's space. It's a battle between the resentment and the contempt for the feminine. So Norton has resentment, and I feel like Tyler has contempt. And so between the two, you need to deal with those mummy issues. So if the dad left home, the good chance that raised by mother is exactly like they said, they were raised by mothers, raised by women. So the mother can emotionally offload onto the son. And so that can make him feel resentment to emotions. And then the mother, if she hasn't dealt with her own sexual issues, the sexuality can be suppressed. So that's the suppression is Norton, and the resentment, the contempt for having to look after the mum or try and please the mum is Tyler, and the resentment, this is the suppression of sexuality, is Norton, the narrator. So he doesn't feel okay in his sexuality. You know, like he might have really felt some things for Marla in the beginning, but was never able to express it. The narrator also feels really confident in the fake world. So it's like, and anyone that's in the fake world can feel really confident in it because they've got a good beat on things. There's a formula. However, that when you start to like throw in a bit of chaos, the mask starts to crumble, and you lose that grounding. And when men lose grounding, even when women lose grounding too, but it's more so for men, they get violent. You know, they get abusive when men lose that grounding on reality. When he's talking to the police on the phone, he says like, "It was me that got destroyed in that condo." So the confirmation of his identity and everything that was in that space is there. So he actually believes that, and he said that really authentically, and he wants to act like it wasn't authentically, but it was really authentic. Like everything that was me was in that condo. Like I got destroyed in that condo when it blew up. So there's definitely a component of that in there. And then jumping around a bit, so when Marla comes downstairs and Tyler's in another part of the house, like the narrator reminisces over having to be between the parents, and like this dance of not being in the room at the same time. So these parents weren't in the room at the same time, and that creates like almost like a bipolar split. So this schizoid becomes like a bipolar thing where like you don't know which way to turn, and it can create like bipolar, which would which you can see between the narrator and Tyler. All right. So when the movie starts to ramp up a bit more, and the projects start to come out, and then Tyler, um, and he wants this. He's invented this way of like how to reset the world, um, like using liposuction, like the fat from women, to turn into soap, to sell back to them to make money, and to make explosive. Now, I love this analogy where it's like we all look for shortcuts. I feel we all look for an easier way to grow, an easier way to maintain our bodies. I mean, like right now, we've got devices that is being sold to plug onto you that can help you change your vibration. And for me, I think that's it's cool, and it's garbage. Like I feel like it doesn't. If you can't do it in your own body, I really felt you're missing the point of that embodiment connection. So like, say for example, you get triggered during sex, so you really break out this device and put it on your wrist and run a cycle for like 30 minutes to calm yourself down. I think the work is the work, and you can't bypass it. So the liposuction is like a shortcut to looking sexy, shortcut to looking like another one of the sleeping awake. Um, and then the irony of selling it back to them. Again, like this revenge theme of like trying to teach people the lesson by doing it. So it's a passive way of getting revenge. I feel, and doesn't really solve anything. It's hilarious. I feel like as a tale and as a mirror story, it's hilarious. But I feel like it's born of bitterness at the feminine. It's born of the bitterness of reality that nihilistic view kind of creates. Laziness creates destruction. Laziness creates destruction. There's a scene which I think is brilliant where Tyler kisses the narrator's hand and puts a chemical burn on his hand. And this is what I see in a lot of like meditation bypass. And what I love about my work is being able to sit with the pain. And I feel like the same thing with ice baths as well. Like I feel like there's an element there that is useful, and there's an element there that can be used to bypass. Like being able to sit with the pain. So he gets a fucking chemical burn on his hand, and Tyler keeps like shaking him out of like trying to like go into his spirit animal and go into like his safe meditative place to like bypass what his body is actually feeling. And I feel like that's where we're at today again, where pain comes up and we try and avoid it by disappearing into like our special place. And like a lot of the deep tissue work that we do, men will want to close their eyes. So we watch them, and we also watch what their energy is doing, and we make sure that they keep their eyes open. Same thing when they're hitting, like when men and women are both hitting, there's a tendency to want to close your eyes and visualize what you're doing. It's not present. Keeping your eyes open, being present, feeling the pain, know what's going on, see how your body is reacting. I feel like it's really important to just stay with the pain. Without pain, without sacrifice, you can't grow. Don't deal with things how dead people do. It's an important component there. Dead people don't want to feel. Dead people don't need to feel. So in that moment of the chemical burn, it's like, stay with the fucking pain. Don't bypass into like a drug. Don't bypass into sex. Don't bypass into anything else. Like, feel the goddamn pain. Feel the sacrifice. Know that you're going to die. Death wish. So the death wish is really important. Where there is a life wish, there is a death wish. Only when you have lost everything, you're free to do anything. And then there's hitting the bottom is the authentic you. And I feel this is where it's like, I feel like a lot of people join like self-destruction, personal development, when they've hit like some kind of health crisis, and it's like they've hit like this rock bottom. It's like they're on their sixth like relationship. They're on like another abusive relationship, another this, another that. It's like fuck, I don't want to do this anymore. So you have two choices: either you can get back on the in the ring and just say it's luck, or say it's the other person and give it another shot, or you can say, no, this is me. What is it about me that I need to change? So the authentic you starts to crawl out when you hit rock bottom. I think there's a level to that, and then it becomes like a thing you need to look for, where it's like you can't find rock bottom on your own. You can't find whatever the nuances are on your own. You need other people and community to help you understand like this is going on for you, which is where I feel relationships are the greatest pathway for growth. There's the authenticity of the nice guy, where like standing up to authority like the nice guy that continues, like crooked kings and crooked queens, because they don't stand up to what they feel is right or morally right. There's a really vulnerable scene where Marla thinks she has a lump on her breast, and she calls up Edward Norton, the narrator, and says, I want you to come over and check my breast. And he was like, can't somebody else do it? Or I can't remember how he tries to initially dismiss it. And then he comes over. And like he there's this element of like Marla wants to fuck him afterwards. And you can quite see like there's a sexual chemistry there. And he's like, no, this is task orientated. I'm gonna come here and check this breast. That's all she really wants. So in that task mode, he's kind of slipped out of that presence that, which comes from owning your sexuality, which comes from knowing what your body is telling you, then picking up on what other people are sending you as well. That after checking the breast, she may have felt aroused in that energy. She wanted to be fucked. You could see quite clearly because he goes, "Are we done here?" And she goes, "Yeah, we're done here." So it's like she wanted something more. She wanted to feel more of him. She wanted to feel him between his legs. She wanted to feel him between her legs. Like she wanted to feel him. And I feel like that's where the feminine comes in again. Like there was a moment there where she needed help, and he was honorable in doing that, and she opened up to receive more of him, and there was a missed window of opportunity there to bond. Jealousy, unable to own the greatness. Spiritual war, depression of our lives, pissed off at the lies you've been told. Let's see what else have I got here that I can jump into. Just flicking through my notes here. Yeah, there's like a rage of like Tyler's trying to explore, and we do this in our workshops to get like a psychodynamic, to get that rage out. Like men and women owning the rage of the lies that they've been told by their parents and society, and then getting angry at themselves for believing it. So there's one thing to like blame the patriarchy, blame men, blame your exes, or blame women, blame your mother, blame whatever, blame the police. There's another part of that you need to take ownership of your anger, of the helplessness, of the anger that you believed something, that you trusted in someone and you were betrayed. And it's a seed that can be used to express your anger. And then once you own that anger, you become much less of a magnet for people that vibe on that level, that are always angry at shit, like, and not wanting to face their anger. So I feel that's really important. Like once you exhaust that rage, create space. It creates space for others to come into your life, and it's a foundation for leadership. So, one of the tasks was like picking a fight with someone who's asleep or one of the sleeping awake, because in doing that you can break them out of their authenticity, break them out of this slumber that they're in. Like they'll fight, and like it starts to question. And I feel like in the age of social media, it's very different because it's a very heady thing. Like saying a comment to someone on anything that can conflict with their belief systems or values, it's kind of a road to nowhere. However, in the movie, like actually face to face, different mechanism. You can feel the other person, you can see the other person. There's a lot to be gained from being physically in the energy of another person. Now, there's an element in all of this homework that Tyler sets, like all these missions around like chaos destruction, and I really feel like it's this attempt to rewrite scripts in the same way that they were written, like during the times of kings and queens, and the destruction doesn't actually address the shadow of why all of these things exist, which again comes from like this heady place of like the same concept we have now of like hurt the rich or like eat the rich or whatever the other stupid stuff, or like all cops are pigs, like all these silly like statements around like authority and systems, and like feminism is the answer, transhumanism is the answer, like all of these stuff that is irrelevant because at the core it's the people. So like coming up with a solution from a headspace and not being connected to your heart, which is what Tyler is dangerous. You know, I mean, they do their best. He does his due diligence of like removing people from places where there is a higher risk of civilian casualties. However, it's still like just blatant destruction, which is effectively just revenge towards the father. Like this frustration that he had no direction, this frustration that he's still looking for his place in the world, and his place in the world he feels like is destroying it. So I feel like there's definitely like some gems there in like destruction is not the answer. Destruction of self is the answer. Like turning that inside and going like, what is my motivation for doing this? Because I feel like the way Fight Club started was that its motivations were pure. Like there was an element of like getting men in their bodies, like this almost like this rewilding of men, and then it turned, which like any leader can become when you don't look at your shadow, when you don't look at the other side of your motivations. There's there's a guy Raymond in the Quickie Mart 7-Eleven, the shop. So one of the missions is to like get this guy to like this Quickie Mart, like a 7-Eleven, and he asked him like, what did you want to be? And you know, he wanted to be like a veterinarian, and he stopped studying because the lessons were too hard, and the option was like, you know, do you want to die, or do you want to be a veterinarian? Like, make a choice. Like, this is your option now. There's a gun at the back of your head. Like, make a fucking choice. And like when certain men are confronted with that, they can make a choice. Like that can become your rock bottom. Like when you're looking at death in the face. And I feel like there's a definite element in passive men that have been raised by women, mostly, without having a strong father figure to aim for, or you've kind of your traits are mostly intellectual. Like there's a temptation there to become passive, and you lose that edge, you lose that cunning that makes you like for a man, like that you betray that biology and you become passive. And I feel some men require that kind of leadership, and that's why Tyler was looked to as like a surrogate father for a lot of men. You are not your job, car, money. Marla again. God, I love Marla. So Marla talks about feelings. Like she wants to know, like what are you getting out of this? And she says this to the narrator. And there's like she's like exposing like all of this shit that's going on in the basement, like exposing. I think Tyler was in the basement, and the deal was that the narrator could not tell Marla about Tyler, because then that would like join the schism back up, and Marla would work it out, and then there would be no more Tyler. So that's why I love Marla's character in this movie. Is like she exposes all that truth, like through that chaos and the shadow, and then like she just gets frustrated and says like, I can't win with you. She just wants to fucking feel him. And like from the start of the movie, like you see Marla, like she's got her defenses up, and she starts to open up. It's interesting that she opens up the combination of the coldness of Ed and the aggressive sex, the authenticity of Tyler. So like Tyler is what he is, and in that authenticity, like she loves that. Like she knows where she stands with that. So there's a safety in authenticity for women. There's also like the when they start recruiting men, like they want to try and push them to the edge. There's like this kind of cult initiation of like resilience and fasting, like breaking this willpower, and then becoming like a commitment to themselves in this like fasting, breaking, like standing outside the house before they can come in, and like this emotional resilience, which is like this deconditioning of who you are. And this is where it gets nefarious, because each man loses his identity again, and you become the sleeping awake, but for somebody else's mission. And I feel like that's where like a lot of cults go down. That's where a lot of like, you can see this in like any kind of escapism, and any man that's looking for purpose is ripe for this. That's why men get in gangs so easily, because there's like a rite of passage, and then they feel like a part of something. There's also like a lack of standards, so the feminine component in the narrator, like that passiveness and not understanding how important standards are and boundaries are, lets Bob in, bitch tits. So, and he ends up dying later in the movie. So it's like, which plays its own plot point, and it's like without thinning the flock for what's best for the movement, someone dies. He dies. So it's like he wasn't really fit to be there, and he wanted to be there. And who knows that like if he got rejected, he may have changed his eating habits. He may have changed who he was as a man to meet that bar, to be an efficient member of this unit of the missions. So I feel like that in the military now, and that what we're doing with like certain elements of the hiring world, where we're hiring people that aren't really skilled because of implied bias, and then so we're hiring people which are of lower skill, which I feel like dilutes lots of things. Like this is a prime example of where like the matriarchy is in play, and we are allowing things to dilute the peaks of where we're going, the peaks of where we've gone. So I felt that's an important thing to say. Like this whole movie is like basically like an anarchist's wet dream. Like everyone thinks like this is how we can revolutionize the world, but it's a rejection and of the darkness. And you see this where the character that's played by Jared Leto is like a handsome blonde kid that's allowed to keep his hair. And Tyler likes him. The narrator doesn't, which is like there's a part of the narrator that he's disowned, his own inner beauty, who he is. Like the feminine components of him is beautiful, and out of balance, they're ugly. So he ends up like going into this darkness, and he becomes like evil, and like wrecks this guy's face, and like everybody looks at him like, what the fuck happened? Like And for me, like that's where men that get stuck in this trap of worshipping leaders don't pull back and don't speak up and go. No one pulled him off. Like everyone put him on such a pedestal that no one like get off him. Like this is bullshit. Like this is against the rules. This is against what everybody agreed to. So no one pulls him off. So acting authentically, I bet you every man in that room, the authentic action would have been to pull him off and risk being thrown out of the tribe. That would have been an authentic reaction. They all betrayed themselves in that one moment, and it all starts to go even more sour, exponentially more sour after that. So, like, that was lower self being taken out on a person. Lower self is the hitting stuff, is like being taken out on, like, what we do is like hitting on pillows, fucking pillows, kicking, stomping, screaming, primal screaming. That's lower self, getting out that stuff. So you don't take it out on a person, especially someone that at some level you love. You got to own that darkness in you, otherwise it comes out. And yeah. There's a scene where it's just like, just let go. Like, stop trying to control everything. Forget what you think you know about life. So there's like this unwillingness to let go. This is when they're driving the car, and like Tyler lets go of the wheel, and the car starts to drift on the road, and like Tyler asks the guys in the back, like what did you wish you did in life? And then one of them said like paint a picture or something, or I don't know what the fuck it was, but they knew. And the narrator didn't know what he wanted. He just wanted to stay safe. Like, he just didn't want to die. And I feel like that's part of what it means to be sleeping awake, where you like, your dream might be to go on a holiday somewhere, and then like it's an avoidance of the sadness that you're not really living your life. And like, because he doesn't know, like, he's a threat. He's a threat because he can be turned when you don't know where you're going. You're passive. You're weak. There's a part of you that can be very easily swayed. And I feel like in that scene, it's a defining moment for everyone in the car, around just like, okay, this is it. Like, I've made a sacrifice. My sacrifice is like I'm never going to be able to paint that picture. And in order to move forward, a man and woman needs to make sacrifices for their life. Like, a man might not want to raise a family because he wants to shoot to the top of the corporate ladder, and that may or may not be authentic, but however, that is a model that we have. Same thing for a woman. She might not want to have kids until she's like 40, 50, and shoot to the corporate ladder, like be wherever she wants to be. And in that period, like, she may have sacrificed her greatest opportunity to have a child. And then for the man, he sacrificed like a relationship, or he sacrificed multiple relationships because he spent more time in the office than at home with his kids, or with his partner. So like, life demands sacrifice, and this fear of missing out is a curse that is used to feed upon your insecurities, to make sure to try and push the agenda that you don't have to miss out. So like, the way advertising works, the way we are sold things, it's like, oh, you have to do this, otherwise you're missing out. So I think one of the great consciousness evolutions would be like, it's okay to miss out. Like, you did what was right for you, and you're not really missing out on anything. You chose what you wanted to do. And I feel like we can get projected on by friends around, like, oh, you missed out on this. Oh, you didn't make it to the club. Oh, Kanye came out. Oh, you missed him. Oh, Tool came out. You missed him. Oh, you must be so sad. No, I did what I wanted to do. No, I'm good. Let's have a look. See. So weakness, doubt, fears. My father dumped me. So there's like this concept of like everybody dumps me. Like my father dumped me. So this is a reoccurring theme in the whole movie about like a lost father. And then in that, there's a good chance that his mother could have blamed him for that. And then so there's an element of like unworthiness of the feminine. So like so you reject that female component. Then they all get angry when Bob gets killed. I mentioned before that Bob gets killed. And then everyone's angry at the police for killing him. It's like, well, that's the sacrifice. Like, the police are part of that the program. They're part of the system to maintain rules, maintain boundaries, and like part of the deal of coming on board is that there's a chance that you could be killed. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. Is there's an element of like, it's not so much like a physical death, but it might be a death of like your reputation. It could be a death of like your peer group. It could be a death of something else, your sponsorship, because you've decided to speak up against something that was out of alignment for you. So there's a death that comes from that, and like you cannot escape authority. Like it'll catch up with you at some point. I feel there's a humility. There was a humility in the death of Bob, which is why they remembered his name. But they all kind of honored like, well, he made this sacrifice. Like he made that sacrifice. So there's a humility in death. Like in death, you have a name. There's a legacy. Remembering who he was. So there's this repeating of his name throughout the film when people die, and I feel like we don't. The way we honor death is something that could be explored with a little bit more honor. Like when someone's doing something that they love, when someone's doing something that they feel a part of, there's an honor in the death of the people that were around them, and you can feel it. You can feel it in that heart space. You can feel it. Now this man, like he stood up, he pushed himself, he did whatever he could do in the boundaries of whatever was there, and he owned it. And I think there's an honor in that. Is this a test? Is this a test? There's a scene where Ed Norton kind of the narrator comes to the grasps, the realization, that Tyler's like been running amok, doing all this stuff he doesn't know about, and there's like this naivety of not accepting the reality of like this is going on. Like there's this refusal to accept and own that spectrum of humanity, like see themselves as they like to be versus who they really are. So like little by little, like the narrator becomes Tyler, and it's so pernicious that he doesn't notice it until it's like really late in the game. And I felt that's what happens when you start life. Like there's these, your shadow gets suppressed, and then little by little, like you become what you hate, what you fear, and like your morals get corrupted little bit by little bit. Your like who you are gets corrupted, and you find all kinds of justifications, and we're seeing this at the moment, like with a lot of the pedophilia that's coming out in the mainstream news, and corruption at higher levels of government. Well, it's like it starts when you're young. Like it starts by like watching your mum and dad like justify some form of economic thievery or something else, and then you just turn a blind eye to it. It's okay, mum and dad do it, and then before you know it's part of who you are. So part of that, owning that shadow, you own the spectrum of humanity. So you can see that there are people that are sleeping awake, and it's challenging for them to wake up. There are people that unknowingly will do corrupt things because it's outside of their awareness. It doesn't mean it's okay. It just means that it's outside of their awareness, and there's going to be a compassion for that. And it doesn't mean that you don't need to speak up about it, because if it's authentic for you to speak up about it, then you fight that fight. He also discovers the importance of loving Marla. Marla mentions, he's intolerable. It cracks me up. And it's all about his emotions. So like he knows he can feel this feeling for Marla and he wants to protect her. And it's like when you start to see like this, he starts to become. There's the blurring of him becoming more like Tyler and allowing some of the narrator, the passive feminine components to fall away or become more integrated with the more masculine components. And there's moments where like he like the collapsing on the fear and insecurities, like when he gets captured by the police, and then when he realizes that they're going to take his balls, that's when he snaps. It's like he takes the gun, and then he becomes like Tyler to escape from the police. So you can see like they're starting to become more integrated in this phase. And then like he's really challenging. He's really fighting with Tyler. Like this battle is playing out of like, no, like this is wrong. Like his morality that's embedded in the narrator starts coming through. I think this is the important moment where it's like, oh wow, like you're starting to come back full circle and like I've gone too far. Economic equilibrium. The thing about like thinking that orchestrating this destruction of all the credit system is going to bring about this panacea and change of the world. Like I feel like it's a fundamental misunderstanding of systems. How like we try and reductionistically view systems, and they're incredibly complex. Like economics in general, like externalities in economics, where you might introduce one thing and it creates another problem. And if you ask an economist about externalities, there's almost like a blind eye to like what these issues are. It's like economics is flawed because of externalities. Like if you can't create a system that has got answers for most things, like why are you teaching it in university? I feel that it does a disservice to teach people that our economic systems that are founded on infinite growth are the way to go, because there's still things around like capitalism, communism, all the isms, all the templates of how we should run a system are flawed, and these externalities get put in a bucket, and then like, oh, that's the next term's government or president to fix, and it's bullshit. So I feel like it's unethical to teach that, and I think it's intelligent and wise to know about them. So externalities, look it up, and it takes responsibility to integrate. So there's like to own that part of you that's Tyler. To own that part of you that's the narrator, the splits that you have. It takes effort and dedication and responsibility. Like, what do you want? And it's the death of that alter ego. At the end, it's like the death of being able to like shoot yourself metaphorically. That part of you that's not who I want to be. And I feel like it's a very violent way to integrate, because I feel like it's like he kills Tyler, and Tyler is a part of him. So it's not so much that you want to kill your shadow or kill your darkness. It's more about being able to integrate it and allow it to exist in parallel. Like like when he shoots himself in the head, like his energy changes as well. Like the narrator's energy changes. He's slightly more confident. Like gets some gauze. Like there's an energy that he has behind that. His whole energy changes. confidence changes. And I feel that's an important component there. And he integrates it as much as he can integrate. So I think that's important to say as well. Like some people you can integrate as far as you can, and then you can go deeper. Like you create a new foundation, a new level for you, and that becomes a new version of you, and then you go back if you want to and refine it. And then it finishes with like my eyes are open, and I feel like when you become aware of what's on your spectrum, like you can see. When you can learn to see yourself, you can see yourself in the other, which creates a lot of compassion and a lot of insight. So it's very easy to become a healer the more inner work that you do. And you can have much more compassion, and there's a discernment that comes from doing inner work that you can't get from anywhere else. You can read all the body reading books you want. You can read till you're however old you think you need to read to. There's a gift that comes from just doing your own work, by understanding you, and you get that clarity, and people find that safety in you, which makes you a great healer if that's something that you want to do. That is the end of my Fight Club thing. I was going to push it into 3. First I said it was going to be 2, and I feel like 2's enough. This feels like it's more than enough to chew on, mull over, and that's where I will end it. So if this felt beneficial for you, then by all means, give me some comments, give me some likes, give me some shares, and jump on Facebook or Instagram and follow me. I share all kinds of insights and things that come through me and what I view of the world. And I thank you so much for listening this far. It's been a long one. It's taken me down many roads. Notes that I wrote didn't always correlate to what I spoke about. However, it feels like they were all relevant at some level. So if you haven't seen Fight Club, I recommend watching it again with some new eyes and feeling into it, like really feeling into what came up for you in that movie. Much love, and I will talk to you all soon in the next episode. Bye.